tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we had some technical issues because we are doing the class from Colombo. So, especially thanks should be given to Mr. Bhandara, who has facilitated us at his home to conduct the class, and he's the one who actually offered the land to the IIT. So, thanks to him, even while at Colombo, we are able to do our class. So, I was unable to deliver you a handout yesterday, sorry for that. But today's lecture will be a little bit brief, and we will be focusing on about the aspect of Santana. So far we have discussed about the Rupas, and we explained about the Kalapas, the units of Rupas. Then we moved on to explain the Rupa Sariras, the bodies, material bodies. And now we shall focus briefly on Rupa Santanas. Santanas is like, it's sort of a body, but it is acting, the realities in it are interconnected. So today's topic would be Santana, Rupa Santana. There are three types of Santanas according to the tradition. We have Rupa Santana, then we have Nama Santana, we also have Nama Rupa Santana. Santana means, according to the explanations given in the Vibhanga Anutika, it says a Santana is something, a combination, a group of realities that are quite difficult to distinguish as different entities. So, a Santana, Rupas or realities, whether it's material or mentalities, realities that act as one group and which are difficult to be distinguished as separate entities. At the same time, who has a causal relationship. So, in the Santana, we have two main characteristics. One is difficult to be distinguished. Then there is a causal relationship. So, Santana is a group of realities. That's the most important part. Group of realities. So, in this group, so when we say a group of realities, each reality is different from each other in terms of intrinsic nature or in terms of their arising, in terms of their arising or in terms of intrinsic nature. Now, two Patavis which share the same intrinsic nature are different from their arising or from the location, in terms of the location. But two different realities are different in terms of their characteristics. I think we have discussed about this point. So, but the thing is, in a Rupa Santana, the reason is these realities acting as a group are interconnected. They are related to each other. Sometimes there is a mutual connection, otherwise they are interconnected. So due to this connection, sometimes it is quite difficult for a person to distinguish the realities as separate entities. So it means, for instance, when we see a line of ants, in the beginning we may see it as a one line, one straight or a curved line. But when we come closer, we start to see that this line is constituted with separate ants. When we get closer, we find ants are moving with a space around them. So, but from far away, we see it as a one line. In the same manner, in a Rupa Santana or a Santana, whether it's Nama or Rupa, realities happen to appear to us as a one thing, as a one unit. Only with our higher wisdom in insight meditation or vipassana jnana, we'll be able to distinguish the entities or realities of a Santana. That is the first characteristic. Then, causal relationship. In a Santana, the realities are interconnected. So, a reason, so for example, something happens to the Santana, it affects the other realities. It affects the other realities. Either different in terms of a location or in terms of time. So, if it is a generation, for example, in a mind stream, a generational mind stream, we do a karma at a certain point and the vipakas will be effected at a later point. So this is the causal relationship, cause and effect. So the realities in this generation, which is called a generation of Santanas, Parampara Santana. So Santana Parampara we can call. Causes are affecting the Santana itself, the other parts of the Santana. At the same time, in a material Santana, something happens to a certain place, you can call it a cause, effects can be felt in other places. We also know if we get an infection in our body, the white blood cells will be produced in some other place. And also, at our mother's womb, according to Theravada, certain effect is made by the rupas of mother and father. And this effect can be felt, can be seen everywhere, all the parts of the body, even after we have grown after several years. So likewise, the causal relationship is another fact. That's why the commentary of sub-commentary of Vibhanga has stated, Santana is a group of realities which are unable to be distinguished as separate entities and also which are related to each other in terms of cause and effect. The causal relationship is another fact in a Santana. So likewise, the groups of realities which are difficult to be distinguished and which are related to each other in terms of cause and effect, that group is called the Santana. So there is no some one entity called the Santana. Santana is also a group of realities. Now so far we have discussed the rupas. Out of rupas, from cluster of rupas we get Rupa Kalapa. From Rupa Kalapas, group of Rupa Kalapas, we get the Rupa Sarira. Then we get Rupa Santana. In some places we can interchange, we use this word, but also we can say a Santana is made out of Rupa Sariras. Anyway, in some cases there is not that much difference between Santana and Sarira. Santana, Rupa Sarira, of which the rupas are connected with each other in terms of causality, are called a Santana. So there is no one entity called a Santana, it's a group of realities. So in the end, what exists are the rupas. What exists are the rupas. So a Santana means an idea. Now when we say about a Santana, one single Santana, it's an idea created in our mind, looking into the groups of realities that are interrelated. So according to Theravada tradition, we find three types of Santanas, as I have written on the board. We have Rupa Santana, then we have Nama Santana, and also we have Nama Rupa Santana. So we shall move on to the Nama Santana first, the Nama Santana. Then we'll move on to the Rupa Santana, and then finally to Nama Rupa Santana. Have a slide. Our main focus is the Rupa Santana here in this lecture because we are talking about, we are in the chapter for Rupa. So if we talk about the Nama Santana, a generation of Nama. So one type of a Nama Santana is the mental cluster. It can also act as a Santana, Chittupada we call. Right? Because they are interrelated with each other. But it's very rarely that we find this word used for Chittupada. The Santana word is rarely used for Chittupada, but still we can use it. Because it has the characteristic of a Santana. The realities in a one mental cluster are different to be distinguished from each other. And also the realities in a one mental cluster have a causal relationship. So according to the two basic characteristics, we can still call it a Santana, but it's rarely used. What we normally find in the Nama Santana is the generation of mentalities. generation of mentalities are called the Nama Santana. So we can call it Chitta Santana or Nama Santana. Nama Santati. There are a few names that we can use for this. We can use for this term. So Chitta Santana or Nama Santana means the generation of mentalities arising, passing away, mentalities arise and pass away as a generation. So in this generation, every preceding chitta is connected to the proceeding chitta. So there is a connection. What is that connection? That is the speed, the momentum like speed of the previous chitta to take the object. Arambana Grahana Vega. That speed does not cease together with the mind. Even though the mind has vanished, the speed remains. That speed causes another chitta to happen. So the entire generation of mind stream of a single being is connected with each other. All is fully connected. Each and every chitta is connected to the following chitta. That chitta is connected to the following chitta. So likewise, it acts as one stream. This connection is mainly made with this speed of cognition. So as a result, what happens? Santana means acting as a one unit. Whatever karma that is done in the mind stream would affect only that mind stream, not a different mind stream. So it shows that the mind stream of a single living being is acting as a one unit. And it's quite difficult to differentiate them, because normally we don't see that we don't feel like we are having different chittas. The understanding we get is this wrong understanding that we have been living our entire life with one single mind. That's how we feel about ourselves. So it's difficult to distinguish different mind moments. At the same time, these mind moments are connected with each other in terms of cause and effect, especially the karma and the vipaka. And if you talk about upanisaya, if you bring a developed a habit, that habit would cause that a similar habit to occur at a later time. Or if we have taken a object strongly with much attention, that force causes the mind, another mind to take a similar object or the same object at a later time. So therefore, there is a causal relationship between the mind stream. So mind stream is acting as a one santana. To prove this, within the tradition, the argument is karma of one being is not affecting another mind stream. It doesn't affect another mind stream. So it only affects the mind stream of that particular being who did the karma. So it shows that it's acting as a one unit. Then we go into the Rupa Santanas. We move into the Rupa Santanas. Number 2. Rupa Santana is a body. Normally I would distinguish, I would divide them into two groups. Santana of a living being. Rupa Santana of living beings. And Rupa Santana of trees. Of trees. Of a living being, we know that at the mother's womb, a certain effect is made upon the child's rupa from the matter gained from the matter of mother's body and also from the father's body. So this effect would remain in the mind stream, in the physical body. Remain means it would remain, and even after many years, whenever new cells are born, that effect can be seen. So this shows that rupas of a human body, even they are happening at different times, different periods of time, they are related with each other in terms of cause and effect. And also it is very clear, rupas in a living being, it's quite difficult for someone to distinguish the rupas in a living being. So they are acting as a one unit. And also we can know through scientific information, the knowledge that we have, practical knowledge, if an infection happens in a certain part of the body, another body part starts to react. A different body part starts to react. And also we know that apoptosis, that is, apoptosis means the suicide of cells. Certain cells in living beings suicide themselves in order to protect other cells. So the question which comes is, now we have a single cell living beings and also multi-celled living beings. So a single cell is also a living unit, but the question which arises is, instead of saying a multi-cell living being, why don't we call it a combination of many living beings if there are lots of cells in our bodies? The reason is, even though we have different cells, they are acting as a one, the unit is acting. All the cells are acting as a one unit. So there is a oneness in this Santana, of this Rupa Santanas. So that is, it shows that therefore if something happens to a part of the body, other parts also are also affected. And also we can know that the effects given to the body from the matter of mind, mother and father are also seen at later stages in our lives. The same thing happens with the trees. It's acting as a one unit. The tree takes the water for the sustainment of the other parts of the body. The roots take the water. The roots suck the water for the sustainment of the other parts of the body. And they are acting as a one unit. So therefore, Rupa Santana is quite clear. The two characteristics would be, it is difficult for someone to distinguish the rupas in a Rupa Santana of living beings and the trees, and also the rupas in these Santanas are interrelated. The cause and effect connection can be clearly seen. So this is the Rupa Santana. Rupa Santana is also a collection of kalapas. Difference between a Santana and Sarira. Sarira is not necessary to be acting. You don't need to have such a causal relationship, very distinct causal relationship between the rupas in a Rupa Sarira. But in a Santana, we do observe such a relationship. Then we come into the third topic, Nama Rupa Santana. Nama Rupa Santana. We know that a living being is a constitution of Nama and Rupa. So we have the Nama process. Also we have the Rupa process. The Rupa process. So both these processes are acting as a one unit. How do we understand it? Our Rupa behaves according to the Nama. And also our Nama is affected by the Rupa. If someone hits us, that feeling is felt not in someone else's body, but in our body, in our mind stream. So it shows that our mind and matter are interrelated. They are greatly interrelated. And it is very difficult to distinguish Nama from Rupa. They are acting as they appear as a one unit, as a one self. That's the biggest problem beings have in the path to liberation. To understand, to separate these Nama and Rupa, and to understand they are two different generations working at the same place or working together. So it's difficult to distinguish Nama from Rupa, and they are acting as a one unit, and there is a causal relationship. If you make an impact to the Rupa, the Nama feels it. If you strike at the Rupa, the Nama associating it would feel. So this is the cause and effect relationship between Nama and Rupa. Now, another aspect is, now someone has an intention to move. So that is the cause here. Intention to move towards some place. Then, according to this intention, that person's body starts to move. So this is the effect. For instance, if it happens that while we think to stand up, if someone else stands up, or when we think to sit down, if someone else sits down instead of our body, the world becomes a chaos. So it shows that the body and mind are interrelated in terms of this cause and effect. So they are acting as a one unit, and they are not easy to be distinguished as different entities. So this is how the nama rupa is effective. And so another example is someone does a karma in this mind stream. At a later stage, this karma effect brings up chitta rupas in the material body. Kamaja rupas, sorry, I beg your pardon. Kamaja rupas in a different life of that same mind stream, connected to that same mind stream. It's clear that the rupa doesn't have a relationship from one life to another. It doesn't have a relationship from one life to another. But the mind stream has a relationship. So whenever that mind stream, whatever the rupa it associates, this karma could impact that rupa, new rupa we can call. The reason is the same mind stream is associating the rupa. So likewise, in terms of karma even, nama rupas are related. In terms of our intention to move, nama rupa is related. In terms of the feelings, the nama rupa is related. So likewise, this nama and rupa is acting as one unit. That's why it's mentioned in the Theravada tradition. The idea of Santana is quite important. So what we are supposed to do in our practice in Buddhism, according to Theravada teachings, we have to dismantle this Santana with our intellect. A Rupa Santana, a physical body acting as a one unit, interrelated to each other, in relationship with each other. We are supposed to see the variousness in this Santana. And also to understand the oneness. Variousness as oneness. What is the variousness of a Rupa Santana? What is the variousness of a Rupa Santana? I think the same things that we discussed yesterday about the Rupa Sarira. Right? About the Rupa Sarira. The variousness. Nanatta bhava in a Rupa Sarira. A Santana, sorry. A Rupa Santana. So this is the human figure. We know that there are different Rupa Kalapas. Each Kalapa has different elements in them. And we have interunitary elements. We have the interunitary elements. So distinguishing the Rupa, distinguishing these qualities within these physical bodies is called seeing the variousness. So we are supposed to see Patavi as Patavi, Apo as Apo, Tejo as Tejo within a one Santana. So we are supposed to, when we distinguish these elements within a Santana, the idea of a body, idea of oneself, one person would start to disappear. Now about the Nama Santanas. What we are supposed to do, we have to see the different mind moments. Though we are not able to see the mind moments as they are, at least the generations of mind processes. We have to see that one mind process is different from another, from something else. If you draw it like this, if these are one mind process, and there's another mind process, so if we can focus on these mind processes as separate entities, separate processes, we see that this is not a one single thing that lives throughout the life or throughout the samsara. So we should be able to see the difference of realities within the nama process, nama santana. And also, if possible, we take one mind moment out and we see that how chitta, chetas, vedana, passa, sanya are acting as one unit. This is also disintegrating the realities intellectually. So when we start to see the realities in their actual form, actual level, in their actual characteristics as separate entities, the idea of oneness, oneself, oneness is not a problem. Thinking that is oneself is the problem. So this idea would surely be uprooted or subdued. Then seeing the nama rupa santana. Nama Rupa Santana. We are supposed to focus on Nama separately and Rupa separately. The focus should be given, paid at Nama, Rupa and Nama separately. Someone can start with Nama or with Rupa. So when you keep on focusing on them separately, one starts to automatically, the mind starts to see that there is no self here. It's a combination of two processes, Nama process and Rupa process. So within the Rupa process also, you can start to see the difference of elements within a Nama Santana or Nama Rupa Santana or Rupa process. The four great elements. In the Nama Santana also, we can see how two different minds are acting at different levels with different objects and so forth. So we are supposed to separate this one. The problem is, now understanding the Nama and Rupa acting as one unit is not the issue. It has been it is a tendency of the mind. It is a tendency of the mind, all living beings, seeing this unitary act of Santanas, applying a new idea called self is the problem. That is the actual problem of these Santanas created. So the Santanas are acting in a way, not in a mixed manner, which doesn't allow easily for us to distinguish them as separate entities. So seeing them as a one unit, we take it as living body, sarira, body, or body of mind, or my body, or either we call it I. Seeing this mind process as a one unit, taking it as a one unit, we tend to think, I think. We tend to feel like I think, or I am. Then seeing the Nama and Rupa as a one unit, taking it as a one self, we tend to see this I, or myself. That is the nature. So the danger of Santana is you cannot do anything for the actual happening of a Santana. So what we can change is the way of thinking, our way of thinking. The thinking pattern should be changed. You just cannot just keep on saying this is not myself, this is not myself, it's not going to affect, it's not a brainwash. What we are supposed to do is, we are supposed to see the realities in their actual characteristics. Not only one time, many times. So many times that we have to keep on looking into these characteristics. So while our mind gets familiar with these characteristics of the Santana, separate realities of a Santana, characteristics of different realities within a Santana, then mind starts to grasp the idea that this is not a one single self. This is not I. This is a combination of realities. So then what happens? The self view would be subdued. It gets subdued. So that is the part. So understanding the Santana as a one unit is vital in our theoretical knowledge, in our practice. Knowing that it appears as a one thing. So when we say that the Santanas appears as a one thing, the underlying reality is it's not a one thing. It is a combination of realities. So what we are supposed to do is see the realities in their actual characteristics. So what happens when we do that? The idea of a self would completely disappear from our mind. So this is applicable. This should be done for Rupa Santanas, for Nama Santanas, and also for Nama Rupa Santanas. So our focus was today, especially our lecture is about the Rupa Santana. So I'll conclude the lecture. Today we shall not take 1 hour because we are in a different place and I feel like the lesson has been done already. So the Rupa Santana, the idea of a Rupa Santana means, I'll conclude the lecture, it says, idea of a Santana means it's a combination of realities acting as a one unit, which are not easy to be distinguished as different realities because of their mixture and which are related to each other in terms of cause and effect. So far, now we have discussed about the Rupas briefly, then combinations of Rupa are Rupa Kalapa, then clusters of Rupa Kalapas create Rupa Sarira, and then we also have Rupa Santana. And Rupa Santana, Rupas are related with each other. Then with the Kalapas, next time we get Rupa Santati. Right? Santati. So we have already discussed about them. So we are left with the Rupa Santati. To understand Rupa Santatis, we have to go into the causes of Rupa. Kammaja Chitta Rutuja, Kamma Chitta Utu and Ahara. Then also, this is partially explained. We have to explain what are the Rupas separately. So from next week, I'll start the lecture of explaining the Rupas, the characteristics of each and every Rupa. Then we move on to how the Rupas are made. So based on that, we shall also explain the Rupa Santati, the generations of Rupa. Then we can have a holistic picture about the Rupa. So theoretically what we are studying about the Rupas, and practically how they appear as Kalapas, as bodies of Rupa Sarira or Santana, or as generations. So knowing them, we are able to see them. After studying, experiencing these, we are able to penetrate into the reality and see the Rupas, understand the Rupas. So therefore, when we study about Rupa in this manner, because what we experience is Santana, we experience is Sarira, so with Sarira and Santana we can move to Kalapa, and with Kalapa, through Kalapa, you can move to Rupa. Also we see a generation of Rupa, Santati. Understanding Santatis, we can understand the Kalapas, then from Kalapas we can move on to Rupas. So in the end, we will try to understand the Rupas as separate entities of our life, and when we know the Rupas in their own characteristic and own function, we get the idea this characteristic itself cannot be a self. A function itself cannot be a self. And we get rid of the idea of a self-view, and we come into the understand the non-self doctrine. Yeah, this will be the lecture for today. We talked about the Rupa Santana, the Rupas acting as a one unit, difficult to be distinguished as separate entities, and have a causal relationship. Yes, I give you open the forum for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Bhante. Hi, Bhante.
Yes.
There was a technical problem earlier, and then looks like you lost connection for about a few minutes. And at the time, you were talking about Chitta Santana. So could you please repeat?
Yes. So when did you got the connection again? What was I talking?
After you finished that Chitta Santana, so you explained about Chitta Santana, and after that you did the Nama Rupa. So we lost the Chitta Santana.
So you heard about the Nama Rupa Santana, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a short, a few minutes.
Yeah, it's okay.
About the Chitta Santana.
Yeah. Chitta Santana or Nama Santana is a generation of Nama Rupas. Sorry, of nominative Nama. It's called Nama Santana. We can also call it Chitta Santana. Sometimes it can also be called Chitta Santati because it's the generation. In this case, Santana, Santati can be similar. But I'll still use the word Santana because the reason is, when we say Nama Santana, we can have two aspects. Because Nama Santana can also be a cluster of Nama. Yeah. Cluster of mentalities. We know a cluster of mentalities are Chittupada. Why do I say Chittupada as a Santana? Because it matches the characteristics. The Santana is a group of realities acting as a one unit, difficult to be distinguished as separate entities, as separate entities, and which have a cause, who have realities who have causal relationships. So in a Chittupada, it's quite difficult to distinguish the realities as separate entities because they are acting as a one unit. And also we see a causal relationship between each of them. So it acts as a Santana, but we really seldom will use this as a Santana. We normally use it as a Chittupada. The second explanation for a Santana is a generation of mentalities. Generation of mentalities. These are various Chittupadas arising and happening. So what is the connection of Chitta Santana? So each and every mind moment of Chittupada has its own, has arising and passing away, and they have a certain speed, momentum-like speed called Aramana Gahana Vega, the speed of cognition, or the momentum of cognition. Momentum is mass in velocity, but it's like momentum-like speed. So even though the chitta vanishes, this momentum-like speed, Aramana Gahana Vega, does not immediately ceases. Does not cease immediately. So this speed causes another similar Chittupada to happen. Similar means another reality which cognizes an object. And even in this Chittupada, the speed doesn't cease together with the mind. After the mind vanishes, immediately it causes another Chittupada to happen. So likewise, the preceding Chitta is connected with the proceeding Chitta. So likewise, as a result, the entire mind stream is connected to each other. As the preceding is connected to the following, immediately following Chitta, and that Chitta is also connected to the Chitta which follows it, so the entire mind stream is connected. So as a result, someone does a karma in this mind stream, it's going to affect only this mind stream, not a different mind stream. It's not going to affect a different mind stream of another being. So what does it mean? This generation of minds are acting as a one unit. Sometimes we create a habit in this mind stream. So this habitual force would cause a similar habit to happen at a later time. It's not going to cause, someone's dana is not going to make someone else generous. It can make an impact because of association, but not as a habit. So if a habitual impact is made, it has to happen in the same mind stream. Why is that? The minds of one generation are interrelated. And it's quite difficult for us to understand these are different mind moments. We normally feel as the same I. One single chitta has been observing the objects throughout this entire life, throughout this entire day, or throughout the samsara, even as some feels. So it's difficult to distinguish the realities as different entities. It's difficult, it's hard. One of the hardest things to do, seeing the rising and falling of different mind moments, or at least the generation of mind moments. For example, if we take as a generation of mind streams, mind processes, right? Even here we have few processes going on. At least we have to see them as separate units, right? So this is not easy to be done. The thing is, we feel it as the one mind, one single mind, has been observing various objects, right? Various objects. So it acts as a Santana. The causal relationship is there. Difficult to be distinguished is there. So Nama is acting as a one Santana. Even a one cluster of mentalities can be called a one Nama Santana, but we don't use it. We normally use to call it for a generation of Chittupada or clusters of minds. So this is the Nama Santana, and you can easily see how it is acting as a one process. Even after life to life, from life to life, even it runs throughout many lives, still it's acting as a one unit. That's why a karma done in a past life could affect the same mind stream in a different life. That is the explanation of Nama Santana.
Okay, thank you, Hi, Bhakti. I have two questions.
Yeah.
So the first question is, so based on your explanation that the Nama Santana, that there is not much a difference between the Santana and Santati, right?
Yeah.
But then according to the chart you draw earlier about the Rupa, then it looks like Rupa Santana and Rupa Santati, they are not quite the same.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the Santana is about the spiritual relationship and Santati is about the temporal relationship?
For Santana is causal relationship, Santati is the temporal relationship, you mean?
No, I mean the spatial.
Spatial and temporal. Yes, when we come into Santati, Dr. Ryan, the temporal aspect has to be there. When we are talking about the Santana, the spatial aspect is there, but in some cases the temporal aspect is also found. So normally in the doctrine, when we talk about the Santana, we are not talking about only at a specific time. So we take the temporal aspect is also there, and also the spatial aspect is there in terms of Rupa Santana. So then we can ask the question, is Rupa Santana is different from Rupa Santati? Yes. Rupa Santati, even now, when we come to the Rupa Santati, we may also tell that the entire Chittaja Santati, for example, Chittaja Santati is not only at one location, it's spread all over the body. So even we say about a Rupa Santati, still the spatial aspect is found, but our attention is given at the temporal aspect, one following another. But when we talk about a Santana, we are giving attention at the spatial aspect and also at the temporal aspect. Both are given. So, but when it comes to the Nama Santana, mainly we give the temporal aspect. But as I said, even a cluster of mind movement, in a cluster of a Chittupada can still be called a Santana. And in that place, they are acting as one unit at the same time. So in that case, we don't have a temporal aspect. They are acting as one unit. The causal relationship is there, not the spatial. So it's a good point that you raised. So when we talk about Santana and Santati, the causal aspect, causal relationship should be there, and also difficulty to be distinguished. These are the main two characteristics. And as you said, the temporal aspect and the spatial aspect, we have to apply accordingly. So to conclude, the answer, the Nama Santana is equal to Nama Santati. If we talk about a Chittupada, we don't have the temporal aspect. We have the causal aspect and the difficulty to distinguish. But when we come to the generation of Nama, we do have the temporal aspect. Then it's not spread. Namas are not extended. We can have a sort of a spatial aspect on when we move. For example, we can say with the body, the mind moves. Then someone can ask a question: is mind physical? Is the mind physical? I think I discussed about this matter a few days ago, in a few lectures ago, that mind is not extended. But we can say it's located. The main reason for that is it's associating a certain physical thing. It's associating a base. So base has a spatial attribute. So if the mind is associating a base, for example, we may say that in a generic group of kalapas, for example, this is the, if we can point out according to Theravada, this is the base where Chakku Vijnana arises, not in other bases. So it shows that the Chakku Vijnana is confined to this space. We will not be able to say where it is, but we can exactly locate where it is at the moment. And the next reason is the Arupa world. According to the tradition, it mentions about the distance from the human world to the Arupa world, and also the distance from one world to another. So it shows that the Arupa beings are existing in a certain space. So what is that space? It's very difficult to understand. It's a very huge thing to understand. So what I feel, maybe one can argue like a Planck constant of time. So in the Arupa world, where does it locate? Where is it located? Someone can bring an argument that the size of a heart base. So it may be associating a space similar to the size of a heart base. It's just an hypothesis, idea. I'm not sure about it, but it has to happen at a certain location. So when we talk about Nama in terms of space, in terms of a location, then when we are moving also, the Nama Santana, someone who thinks deeply can bring a spatial aspect, but it's not extended. It's not like a Rupa Santana. And when someone has died somewhere and born in some other place, the location changes. So that is something to think deeply. Otherwise, in Nama Santana, we have only temporal aspect, not the spatial aspect. But for the Rupa Santana, we do have the difficulty to distinguish, we do have the causal aspect, and we do have the spatial aspect, and also we do have the temporal aspect. Another thing is, even a Rupa Kalapa can be called a Rupa Santana. Rupa Kalapa can be called a Rupa Santana technically. We normally don't do that. Technically we can call it, because they are difficult to be distinguished, and they are acting as a one unit, and there is a causal relationship. So if we talk as Rupa Kalapa Santana, then no temporal aspect is made. But in general, when we talk about Rupa Santana, spatial and temporal both aspects are found. When you are talking about Nama Santana, only the temporal aspect is found.
Thank you so much. And the other question is, so is it possible to think about Santana and Santati as the individuality of a thing? So you have different individuals have different Santana and different Santati.
Exactly. Individuality comes with Santana, Santati, and also sometimes Sarira. So that's why we call the oneness. So individuality comes from that. And we can call individuality is sort of a law or some phenomenon, something like that. Due to this, the Santanas and Sariras are made like that. Or someone can also reversely say, due to Santana or due to Sarira, individuality is found.
I see. So just the main question is, so what are the benefits of seeing the different Santanas in terms of individuality?
Yes. That's another question. I briefly explained during the lecture. So, knowing that, my intention was, knowing that it's a one Santana, what happens, now there are two individualities. Knowing a group of realities acting as an individual unit is one thing. Considering that unit as a self is another thing. In both the cases, we have an individuality. So if someone understands this Nama process is individual to this process, it's not mixed with another process, Nama Rupa process, so we conventionally call it a self. So if someone understands this as a unit of Nama and Rupa, non-self realities acting as a one unit, this is not a problem for someone's liberation. But the thing is, we are unable to stay in that understanding. We quickly move into the thing that there is a person called I, there is a person called myself. This is also an individuality. So a person who is going to remove this individuality has to come into the differentness, right? Variousness. So I'll put it in this way. So there are two individualities. And variety, diversity or something. So seeing that these are different processes, understanding them as different realities. So seeing them, they are acting as a one unit. Acting as a one unit of non-self realities is another individuality. We know that karmas done here would affect that process only, Then with this, we come into the idea of a self. This is also individuality. So this is the place normally Puthujanas live, the idea. They dwell in this idea. This is the reality. This is also part of the reality because it's acting as a one unit. We cannot deny, we cannot say it's just a concept. It's a sort of a phenomenon happening. Nanatana. But the thing is, when we want to move into this, instead of jumping from here to here, I personally feel understanding this step, which is closer to the reality, which is the expression of a dhammata, of a law, natural law, would clearly helps us to, because personally I feel knowing this as a one unit, as long as we are focusing on the realities, working as a one unit, this is helpful to vipassana. In some places, some teachers have explained, for example, now think about a sarira. If you go into Patisambhida Magga, it says you can contemplate kesa as anicca, or understand kesa as dukkha anatta. So another point that I think some may also have heard that it's not proper to say kesa as anicca because kesa, or hair for example, hair as anicca impermanent because hair is a concept. So you have to go into the realities. But even some great scholars of Abhidhamma have mentioned you can contemplate hair as impermanent. So what is the difference? In this first aspect, he's taking the concept as a one thing, so it's not proper because it doesn't exist. Hair doesn't exist, so it's not proper to contemplate impermanence of a concept. But in the second aspect, when he says hair, when he thinks as hair, he's thinking about a group of realities. A group of realities can appear and pass, do appear and disappear and pass away. So you can focus on the group of reality, just naming it as hair, but the understanding has to be about the reality. So there is a vipassana meditation can be done on both. But it's not easy to do on Nama Rupa Santana together as one unit. It's not easy, but in some cases, for example, Yankinchi Samudaya Dhamman Sabbantan Nirodha Dhamman. So in such an understanding, generally understanding all the sankharas, which origins are liable to or sure to pass away. So these are the grounds of vipassana. These are the grounds of vipassana. And understanding this would clarify, would facilitate easy transition from self to the realities. So this is acting as a middle stage to come into that level, and also for some, just taking as ultimate units of ultimate realities, still you can focus on the vipassana. Such vipassana are called, I shall explain this when you come to vipassana practice, are called panyati, missaka vipassana. Venerable ladies here has termed this. Especially when you go into Kayanupassana. In Kayanupassana, body parts. And also when we are talking about the postures, keeping attention on postures and so forth. In some places you cannot just completely ignore the ideas of a body or an organ. The thing is, the idea of an organ, idea of a concept is still there, but our attention is gone to the clusters of reality, the groups of realities. So therefore, this stage, for some, it's an object of vipassana, and also it facilitates the intermediate stage for us to go into the actual reality. And this we cannot deny because it's the ultimate process, which is actually happening as a one day.
Thank you. The first question of the audience is, could you please elaborate on the difference between the Santana of living beings and the Santana of trees?
Yeah, Santana of living beings is greatly affected by karma. That is the biggest difference. According to Theravāda, living trees are not affected by karma. One example, argument brought by Lady Theravāda is, but I am not sure whether how convincing this argument is. He has said, you can cut a branch from certain trees and you can grow another tree. So this cannot be done in terms of humans. You cannot cut a hand and grow another, a hand would not grow. So his argument was, there is only one karma acting on each and every human being, living being. One karma we gave the patisandhi and makes the life to run. It doesn't mean that only that karma is giving results. Various other karmas support and disturbs. But it's one single karma which gave you the patisandhi, runs throughout the entire life as the lifeblood. So the reason why humans cannot grow like trees, human parts cannot grow into another human being, is the effect of karma. But we know that there is a certain creature in the world that you have seen, you cut it into two pieces and it starts to grow. So I'm not talking about a worm, it starts to completely grow into another human full being. And also according to medical science, our bodies are made out of the sperm and the egg connected of mother and father. So our main body is a development of parts of another living being. The Kamaja Rupas do appear and consciousness appears based on them. So that is the explanation given in Paramata Dipani why trees are not affected by karma. And if trees are karmic, they have been born, reborn again and again. And such a thing doesn't happen according to literature. No one is born as a tree. One can be born in a tree as Deva or a spirit, but not as a tree. So the main difference between a living being and a tree is the effect of karma. But trees do show characteristics of a living being. It grows. Sometimes some trees do locomotion even, some trees move even, some trees even find their food. But normally trees get their food within themselves. They generate their own food. So that is the main difference. Other than that, when you talk about a Santana, you act upon or you make an impact on a certain part of a tree, other parts also get affected. Same like the lifespan, the Santana of a human being. So there is a close resemblance of these two. But the only difference is human beings or living beings' body are affected by karma. The trees are not affected by karma. And when the Buddha promulgated the rule that monks cannot cut or destroy trees, what his admonishment was, the people in the world, most of the people in the world think that living tree has a one indriya, one faculty. I think it's the kaya faculty they were talking about, the body faculty. If my memory was correct. So, but human beings have many faculties. Because you can see some trees do react to the sunlight. They turn towards sunlight, they grow towards sunlight, they also, the roots go searching for water. And certain trees do react when you touch it, or when there is an impact. So the bodily faculty is active in a tree. So as the convention, because conventionally human beings conventionally believe that it's a living being, Buddha inhibited monks from cutting and destroying trees. Dissimilarities of a Santana of a tree and Santana of a living being.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. And the next question is, Bhante, when you say mind stream, you mean from Patisandhi to Chuti, right? It's not just one treaty, right?
Yeah, so when I say mind stream, mind process, normally in my lectures I would use the word mind process for VTs. When I say mind stream, it can either be between from Chuti to Patisandhi or the entire samsara. Sometimes for the entire samsara I use the word mind stream. So it has a previous birth. The mind was working in that birth. So the entire thing I call a mind stream or a mind generation. Sometimes I may use it for within one life, but in such case I would specifically say it. So when I generally say mind stream or generation of mind, I am referring to the mind stream which has been existing for throughout the entire samsara. The Chitta Viti I refer normally as mind processes.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. Yeah, there is no more question, Bhante. I think we can.
Okay, so we can conclude it. We can call it a day. And thank you for listening. And we also should pass special thanks to Mr. Chandakirti Bandara for facilitating us this opportunity to do our class, this lesson at his house in Colombo. So may all this merit help him to reach all his aspirations and his family. And with this merit, may all of us be able to realize the truth of the world and get liberated as soon as possible. And also may this help for the sustainment of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanam Chiram Tiktatu, Buddha Sasanam Chiram Tiktatu, Buddha Sasanam Chiram Tiktatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.